Dimitri Axelrod is co-founder of the Evolute Institute, which is an organization based in the Netherlands that leads psilocybin and darkness retreats for personal transformation. His personal journey of transformation began with an unexpected, life-changing, entheogenic encounter in the Brazilian forest almost a decade ago. I mean, if that doesn't have you leaning forward, I don't know what would. He is a breathwork facilitator and is currently training with Jack Cornfield and Tara Brach in the mindfulness meditation teacher training. And in addition to his work with Evolute, he is a vice president of growth at an AI startup in Berlin. Dimitri holds a master's degree with distinction in health policy from the London School of Economics, and he obtained a PhD in health economics while researching at Hamburg and Oxford universities. So, Dimitri, we are so looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much. Take it away.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Stacey. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight, or this morning, actually. I'm based in Berlin right now, so for me, it's already early evening. And it's actually funny, I had to giggle a bit because I'm used to talking a lot in front of business people, as Rachel and and Bennett already spoke about, right? We are also working with people who usually hold a position of responsibility or influence in organizations, and so I have to be very careful with the choice of my words. But when I heard the word soul appear at the beginning in the intro by Stacey, I had to giggle a bit because I think that's what the spirituality and the religion of the MSR abbreviation stands for, so we can be a bit more loose with these terms. So I have roughly 15 minutes, and what I want to talk about is kind of more of a practical stance on how is our approach looking like when working with these people, and can we actually leverage psychedelics in a way to help people in leadership positions grow, mature, and in a sense become more wise leaders, if you will, right? So I think you should see my slide deck. If not, please give me a sign. And as Stacey said, like my motivation for this entire endeavor actually started in this little hut in Brazil, which you see on the left-hand side. And I more or less stumbled into that experience, and I was completely naive about what was going to happen. And honestly speaking, this was an experience that was very deep, very intense, and at the same time, it was also very destabilizing. And it took me years to actually fully metabolize what has happened. I still am, and I think for the rest of my life, I still will be integrating these lessons, right? But of course, that own experience put me on a very unexpected path in life, away from, I would say, also classical business, more to the question, is there a way of kind of building a bridge to people who would otherwise not consider such an experience in a way that allows them to open up to this world? And so this is then when I met my co-founder Christopher, who by the way had his experience in a bit more luxurious setting on the right hand side, as you can see in the Netherlands. And so together we basically founded this institution, right, that tries to see if we can catalyze personal growth using altered states of consciousness, amongst others, psychedelics, but also we're working, for instance, with darkness, which is completely free of any substances. Some of you might have come across psychedelics also kind of trickling down into the business field, right? The Economist writes about it, bosses feeding their staff psychedelics, the startup scene in California, obviously in the Valley, shamans moving to Davos in Switzerland to the World Economic Forum, but also even like, I would say, rather conservative German-speaking media like Der Spiegel, Neue Zürcher Zeitung, or the Manager magazine have been reporting about this trend of psychedelics for managers and for leadership and what does it do to them. But still, I would say most people, when they think about psychedelics, right, they actually have in mind something like this, kind of a shady rave where people consume some substances. But if you talk to people about these experiences, I would say just very few of them would say, well, it has been a completely life-changing or transformational experience, right, in this setting. And this is because one could argue that psychedelics really are meaning enhancing and in the sense are very much dependent on the environment and the intention and the entire context in which they're happening, right? Kind of in the worst case scenario, what happened to people under the influence of psychedelics can be seen in kind of research, if you will even call it, or experiments by the CIA, MK Ultra, and so forth, with very, very detrimental outcomes for the experimental subjects. But of course, most of you have already heard of the application of psychedelics in clinical settings to treat a vast array of different psychiatric disorders. But where we would position ourselves as kind of a retreat center, Evolute Institute, is more on the right-hand side, right? So it's really a non-clinical setting, but that is also not purely recreational, that has some inner work as at its core, and offers a professionally held ethical and legal environment where this work can happen. Yeah, so we're talking about leadership, right? And also as part of our vision, how can we transform leadership? And the way we look at that is through a lens of the meta crisis, right? I mean, you already mentioned in the opening of your presentations about this difficult seismic times we're living in, and some scholars argue that these multiple crises, they all have shared roots, right? Which is kind of called the meta crisis. And if you look deeper beyond the visible system, beyond the kind of political, social, economic superstructures we have, right? If you drill down to the unconscious system levers, so to speak, right? We can talk about three disconnects, right? And mostly informed by Otto Scharmer from the MIT and Jamie Bristow from the UK, right? It's an ecological divide where we see ourselves as civilizations separate from nature. Nature is something to be managed, to be dissected, to be exploited, and not an inherent part of us. There is this social divide where we are disconnected from the rest, and I guess the skyrocketing inequality is just one symptom of that. And then there is a spiritual divide where we are disconnected from our deeper wisdom, from something that is beyond us. In a sense, what the role that religion played, was replaced with an iPhone, as somebody said. And so there's still a deep yearning in many people for, more meaning in life. And so I think who put it quite beautifully is Jack Kornfield, who said in the end, no technology in the end can stop environmental destruction and warfare, but really the powers of science and technology now have to be matched by the inner developments of humanity. And I think in that sense, if we have the technology and the power of gods to shape and even destroy this world, how can we also develop the wisdom and the love of gods, if you will? And so this is where kind of the concept for us of transformational learning comes in, right? Instead of just pushing information to people and giving them new skills, enlarging their skill set, we try to really provide a context where we can enlarge in their inner holding space, right? So the question becomes, how can I hold more of the complexity, more of the paradoxes in the world? And how can I then relate to these outer stimuli with more inner freedom? How can I really not react to it, but really respond consciously? And I'm going to argue that psychedelics can be a very interesting tool and accelerator to work on enlarging that inner container. And so I'm just going to very briefly talk about the neurobiology of psychedelics, and really very superficially. But if you want to find out more about that, one of the most well-known and I would say also most accepted models is the Rebus model by Carhart Harris and Carl Friston. And basically what it says, the brain can be perceived as a prediction machine. And I mean, that's the kind of the theory du jour, right? We talk unfortunately about machines when we talk about people. But this criticism aside, the brain has kind of a hierarchical structure of beliefs or priors, how they're called on the paper. And so top level beliefs at the top of the pyramid, they will influence everything else at the lower levels, right? And so certain beliefs about, is am I a good or a worthy person or not, will influence probably most of the other lower level beliefs in your life, right? And this is symbolized basically here by this thick top arrow. And the little arrow you see at the bottom has very little influence. So this means information from the more limbic system, from the more kind of reptilian brain, which kind of channels information from sensory input, cannot update these beliefs. So no matter what happens kind of in your life, right, these top level convictions or beliefs, they stay unchanged. And this is symbolized by this red ball hitting this violet surface with an uneventful thud. And under the influence of psychedelics, certain areas of the brain, especially in the cortical and neocortical areas, the default mode network, amongst others, are kind of being tuned or regulated down. And so new information can travel up the pyramid bottom up. So your beliefs or your priors can be updated or changed. And this actually creates this malleability, right? This period or this window of neuroplasticity. And this is why psychedelics gets so much attention also for dealing with a lot of clinical treatments as well. And something I would like to show you, which some of you might have come across already, this illustration, is basically how a human brain in the resting state looks like in terms of its functional connections of the functional networks, right? And they compared that, a person on placebo, with subjects who took psilocybin. And you see there is kind of an exponential multiplication of functional networks within and across each other, right? And this is also probably like a beautiful demonstration of this enhanced neuroplasticity, which then, of course, also, or not of course, but apparently seems to result in many nice side effects, if you will, right? From psychological flexibility to deep appreciation of life, etc., etc. So I'm not going to go into detail into these studies, but I can share the slides with you where I'm citing all this research. And so also what I would argue is that psychedelics, our research shows that it allows us also to address these systems leverage points, right? So this ecological divide, people who were studied who took psychedelics report stronger nature relatedness, pro-environmental behavior, an increased sense of inner sustainability. Same goes with respect to the social divide, where people feel a lot more connected to themselves, but also to others. And last but not least, also kind of this aspect of self-transcendence gives people a completely new new potential for finding meaning and kind of a sense of spirituality in life. I would argue, though, and that's kind of I think an important aspect for our work. Really, it's not only about the substance, but really it's the context is very important. What is my intention? What is both the interpersonal, the relational, but also the physical environment I'm taking these experiences. We don't like to think about the substance as a magic pill or a silver bullet to solve the problems, but really, do participants come with a sense of commitment for inner work and for change? And can we instill that in them? And it's also really an endeavor that happens within community. And a lot of suffering, I would say, happens in relationships, but also a lot of healing or integration happens in relationship as well. So these are important aspects for us. To show you just very briefly how our traditional curriculum looks like. So usually it's a 3-month program where we have a clinical screening by a psychiatrist in the beginning. We then have a part-time virtual preparation phase with both group and individual sessions in the 3 weeks preceding the retreat. Then we have 4 days on site in the Netherlands where one psychedelic ceremony will happen amongst others. And we have around 1.5 months of integration work again. So really translating these insights into your day-to-day life. And then usually people end up in a community where they can continue integrating in their peer groups beyond the kind of the formal retreat setting. Just to give you an impression of where such retreats happen, right? So we choose settings that are in the nature. I mean, in the Netherlands for legal reasons, where we have kind of privacy. We usually have dedicated ceremonial spaces where people then also undergo their ceremony. So really summing up, how our look on that topic is, can we cultivate leadership and also systemic change, not through the visible layer, through better policies or through whatever better instruments, but rather from the inside out. And we think that to address that, we need to address this root of the meta crisis of the disconnection, and psychedelic work can be a catalyst for inner work and to address these topics of connection to self, to others, and to the world at large. And through that, really allow a maturation of our own perspectives, of really the layers of awareness and circles of belonging that we can expand beyond, I would say, kind of the more narrow circles of self-interest. And so really helping people to assume their responsibility in the world and really their ability to respond also to the challenges. Yeah, that's maybe in a nutshell how we look at that, and very happy to talk or discuss with you how we could support research. We are always interested in that. We are currently inviting participants to take part in different ongoing studies from different institutions, really from the UCSF to universities in the Netherlands and the UK. If you have ideas, very much welcome. What we're looking for ideally is some kind of a dedicated researcher or team that will stay beyond their master thesis or beyond their PhD thesis, ideally, so that we can assure that really it also leads to a publication in the best scenario. Yeah, maybe that's from my part, and over to you.